So this session we've called it the numbers game. The numbers game makes it sound kind of trivial, but it's not. It's not trivial. We're talking today about market research, about statistics that underlie the halal infrastructure, the halal market, the halal industry. And market research is used for a number of things, as most businesses know. It's used to make important business decisions. It's used to monetize and quantify the supply and demand for products and services. It's used to determine new business opportunities. And for sure, it's used to avoid business failures. So we have with us a special guest all the way from, I believe we're talking to him right now from Dubai. And that is Rafi-uddin Shikoh, who is the founder and CEO of Dnr Standard. And Dnr Standard is a specialized market research and advisory firm. Rafi-uddin has led thought leadership and strategies on empowering Islamic economies for global impact. I won't go through all of Rafi-uddin's pretty impressive resume here because he's done a lot of things in his career. But what he's focusing on is the halal market and how knowing the numbers can help you make better business decisions for your businesses, and also all of us really for the halal industry in general, and to help our advocacy on the national level as well. And of course we have with us again our marvelous founder and of the Halal Expo and Summit, Marwan Ahmad, who's also the president of US Halal Consultants, Arabesque Media, and the president of the American Halal Council. And I don't need to say anything more about Marwan because you already know who he is. And so this panel is going to talk to us a little bit about the numbers game. So how about, why don't we start with Rafi-uddin, if you would like to tell us some thoughts about where you're coming from, what Dnr Standard has been focusing on, and what's the importance of knowing the statistics underlying the industry?
Sure, thank you. I begin in the name of God, the most merciful, the most beneficent. I'd like to begin also by thanking Marwan and colleagues at Arabesque for putting this forum together, a much needed platform and in our community in the United States to look at this unique opportunity. So thank you first of all, and thank you for inviting me. Dnr Standard is a US-based management consulting firm. We've been around for over a decade now. And I would say one of the areas where we have specialized and have now, alhamdulillah, thanks to God, have been delivering impact is sizing and profiling the investable global halal market. And we've been working with investment firms, investment funds to give them the investment opportunities in this space globally, as well as in the United States. We've been working with governments in terms of looking at this halal market as an opportunity for economic growth, economic diversification, as well as enabling the socio-demographic impact in their countries, as well as working with the industry players in the halal economy. So multinationals, global players to startups who are looking to develop their sector growth and expertise, tapping into the halal opportunity, specifically in 6 main sectors, which are food, pharmaceutical, cosmetics, as well as media, modest fashion, travel, tourism, and then besides that, anchoring around Islamic finance. So that's a little bit about us, and the importance of research is obviously, when we talk about business, in terms of business decision making, facts matter, and data in terms of the scale and size of the opportunity helps us all make decisions in terms of where to invest, where to serve the needs of the market, etc. So I don't think I need to say too much. I'm assuming our audience appreciates the importance of data. So we've been, our consulting work has been anchored around producing original market intelligence at a global level. So, and especially given the space of the halal market, both from a consumer point of view, as well as trade opportunities, as well as investment and industry, there's a lot of, there's a big need for good intelligence. And so a lot of our advisory work is anchored in producing original market intelligence. So that's a little bit of a background. I'll pause with that.
Wonderful. Let me just say that I am actually filling in for our moderator, Rima Abu Hamdia, who is a journalist. Unfortunately, she was called away to the White House today to cover something, so she couldn't be with us. So I'm just going to wing it for her. So Marwan, would you like to add to the discussion here?
Yes. Thank you, Rafi, for being with us. Rafi comes from a strong organization that has been working in this domain, like you said, for 10 years. And we're glad that we are working together on this, and he's on this platform so we can discuss the importance of research and data. I'd like to address a few points before we take some questions from the audience, so we don't talk too much, and listen to people and what they think as well. So why do we need data and research? Data and research are important for businesses, but it's also important for the consumers. The average person may not think data is important for them, but it has a lot of impact on their life and the products they consume or services they use. The data will measure the consumer's size, how many are there out there that consume certain products and services, and also measures their purchasing power. Without knowing this information, companies will be working in the dark and will only have to guess how much they should produce and provide products or services in any market, geographical market. It also measures the consumer's interest. Some company or businessman might think his idea is a great one, and they think when they put it out in the market, everybody's going to love it. But they won't really know if they're going to love it unless there's some research that tells what the consumer is interested in. So research and data is important in that aspect. Another reason, it will measure business focus, growth, and potentials. I was talking today to some of our amazing exhibitors who are here today, and they were telling me about the markets they would like to reach out to distribute their products. And guess what? The markets they want to focus on are traditional large Muslim markets. New York, Chicago, Dallas, the big cities where Muslim concentration. And I told them this is the wrong approach, because yes, there are numbers there, but there is a lot of competition. The market is saturated. Look into markets that are not saturated yet, where when your product is on the shelf, it doesn't have a lot of competitors on that same shelf. And you only can find out about the size and potential of that market is through research and data. Otherwise, again, it's just a shot in the dark. So the demographics of the consumers, whether Muslim or non-Muslim, who want halal products and services, has to be done through a research. Right now, we buy this data from generic sources, and we have to sift through to find out who are the Muslims and who are the other non-Muslims who want to buy this product. So it's a lot of manual labor to kind of sift through all of this data right now. That's why we need our own research. Who will benefit from the research? The businesses, of course, number one. That's a natural ally, because they want to know where their areas and interests are. Government will benefit from the research. We've been talking to the FDA about halal market, and they're very interested to know where are the halal consumers. And again, we're not talking about Muslims only. We believe there are as many non-Muslims who consume halal as much as Muslims. And we just need to identify that through research and actually just prove it through research. Because I can say this all day, but without data and through a third independent source, nobody will take my words for it. That's just my conviction. We have to back this up by data. Another beneficiary of the research will be consumers, because we can understand the behavior of the consumer, their purchasing power, and which will result in lower cost for products when we know the markets better, and creating more competition, which will drive, again, prices lower, which benefits the consumer. And that's the biggest winner at the end. The businesses will benefit, but the consumer is the ultimate winner of the research. Therefore, they should support.
So it sounds like a no-brainer. Why is it so hard to get support to do that kind of research? I mean, shouldn't it be relatively easy to have businesses come together and say, look, it's going to be good for our bottom line, it's going to be good for the consumer. Why can't we do this more easily?
Lack of understanding is the biggest challenge we've been facing with businesses when we tell them that we need your support to conduct the research. And a few of the businesses asked us, so how many questions are you going to ask to a survey or research, and how many people are you going to survey? And we went to the research company that we signed the contract with. We asked them the same question. He came back and said, well, we're going to survey 1,200 people. Half of them are Muslims, half of them are non-Muslims, and we're going to ask them 12 questions, which is a typical standard research for any market. They didn't think it's real or serious. They thought this is a small number. They thought the questions are little, and it's not enough to give them data. And we asked them, okay, so what do you have in mind? What's comparable to this? They didn't have an answer because they never done it before. But they don't want to trust the professionals, the agencies who will conduct this research. So that's the biggest thing.
Well, we certainly have a professional with us. Rafi, what are your thoughts on this? Does Dnr Standard have trouble doing research on the halal market, especially in the United States? Or have you found it more easily done?
I think it's a function of supply and demand, like you said. If the businesses and investors are looking for research, then they will pay for it, or they will pull it together. As Brother Marwan was saying, there are various research organizations, from the Nielsen's of the world to firms like us that are specialized. So I think the challenge is, because it's a faith-based, the halal market, as Marwan highlighted, is not just for Muslims, right? And we believe there is demand for it. There's consumers that consume halal that go beyond Muslims. So as we know, when we look at baseline data set, especially in the United States, when we look at the census data, which does not capture the faith aspect of data. So this creates some challenges. However, I would say any company, and I was going to share some of the data on the US's role in the global halal economy as the #1 exporter of halal products in the world. I can tell you, all major exporters in the United States targeting halal market do their research, and they spend on it. So I mean, they may not share. Obviously, it's proprietary, but they certainly do so. And that's the practice of all the major firms who use data. It doesn't matter if it's the Chinese market, or if it's the Jewish market, if it's the Latin market, it's the Hispanic market. And so the halal market is part of that segmentation. And I believe, and I would say in the past few years, the prominence of halal market opportunity has grown. The interest is certainly grown. So, and we have seen a lot more companies offering research. You can just Google halal market research, and you see now literally hundreds of reports on the halal market. Now, just within the United States, it definitely is challenging for some of the reasons we mentioned, the limitation of the census data aspects. But at an individual commission level, we have companies who are commissioning and doing research on by region, by state, by demographic, by product type, consumer level research, as well as other behavioral research trends. So I see a positive trend when you speak to is there interest in this. I think there's a lot of interest in this, but it's still in its infancy, so the opportunities are tremendous. And I think it's still in its infancy, especially in the United States, from a domestic market point of view. That makes sense.
Yes, and that's encouraging. I think we've seen some major businesses really adopt halal things in more of their mainstream marketing, like Whole Foods, for example. And presumably they're doing market research and paying for market research to get the data that supports their changing strategies. So we are definitely seeing more and more mainstreaming of all things halal. What other thoughts do you have, Marwan, on where we should be going with research?
First, I'd like to caution from the hundreds of reports on the internet about research. I was curious, because I keep receiving emails saying, "Oh, we have halal data and we have halal research. Would you like to buy the report?" And I called some of the companies and I asked the question, "So, what does your report include? What are the products that you surveyed?" And through asking questions, and they told me that it covers, fresh fruits and vegetables. And they told me this. I said, "How can fresh fruit and vegetable, be halal certified, or considered to be halal or not halal? If it's a processed food, I understand, but if it's fresh food, there's no halal certification required or categorizing it as halal or not halal." So I knew those reports many of them are just, not real and they're just bogus, basically. So we have to be careful. Like Rafi said, we need to have research done locally, domestically, and by independent agencies. Somebody who have business interest in the market cannot conduct research. This is a conflict of interest. And that's why we're doing this through the American Halal Council, a nonprofit organization. One of the programs we have is to conduct halal research, not ourselves, no, by hiring professionals who will be doing the work. And that's the goal, is to understand the US halal market. So it has to be independent. Other players in the research could be universities. The universities can fund or conduct halal research as well in the market. And that's an independent side. I'm not sure if government can or should be involved in funding halal research, but it's possible, maybe through grants. I have not seen any government grants focusing on halal market, but it's worth looking into.
I think clearly there is, the U.S. Department of Agriculture actually did issue a notice requesting comment on a number of different areas that could impact halal. And so they're definitely interested in it. And in fact, I know we have talked with USDA, with several departments that were interested in finding out more. They really just think there's a lot of ignorance out there, and it's an educational. We need to be continuing the educational function, what we're doing here in the summit. So that will help probably as well.
Absolutely, and one of the important sources of funding for research are businesses, but it has to be unconditional funding. We cannot give money to a research and say, "I would like the outcome to be such and such." And that's a no-no. Or I'd like, to put any conditions for that matter. They have to fund it to an independent agency who take the fund and put it in an authentic, research that will produce authentic results and could be shared with the important players.
You have some additional thoughts, Rafi-uddin?
Well, if I'm able to, if you'd allow me, I seem to be able to share my screen. I'm not sure if that's going to work, but let me know if you're.
Try it. Oh, yes, we do see it.
Okay, so maybe I can just quickly share some of the data and research we have that perhaps shed some light on the type of insights that we have on the U.S. halal market as well as the opportunity. We've been producing for the past 8 years a global report called State of the Global Islamic Economy. And we have defined this in a certain way and then sized it. And the way we sized it is based on the global Muslim spending on these sectors. Core products are affected by Islamic law, and that's the definition by which we identify what sectors fall under halal. And I just wanted to just kind of say that.
Rafi-uddin, would you mind repeating that? I didn't quite hear it.
Okay, so what I was saying is that, when we say halal, obviously halal market or halal markets or Islamic economy and all the manifestations or terminologies, certainly, as Brother Marwan rightly said, the methodology has to be clear. So what I'm stating is that this report, and by which we size the global halal market to be 2.02 trillion in global Muslim spending, is based on a definition that those industries or those sectors whose core products are affected by Islamic law are the ones we characterized in our analysis as the halal economy sectors, and we determined a market size for it. And this includes Islamic finance, which has an asset worldwide $2.8 trillion, and obviously there is a domestic Islamic finance market in the US as well. When we talk about specifically the United States, we do a global index of countries, and in which Malaysia, Saudi Arabia, UAE, most of these countries are Muslim majority countries. However, we see countries such as Singapore, UK, and others that are coming up. And US is ranked 50th when we look at it comprehensively across these 6 sectors that we evaluate. But what's very promising and relevant for us in the United States is the fact that when you look at the halal products, when I say halal products, I mean food, pharmaceutical, and cosmetics, the exports out of the United States to the Muslim majority countries, the United States today is the leading exporter, and this is based on the trade data from UNCTAD and ITC, the global trade data sources, whereby $18+ billion of halal products were exported out of the United States. So it's certainly, when we talk about the opportunity, there is a domestic side of it, but there's also an international trade side of it. And I think you were talking about USDA and other government entities, and I think from our government trade point of view, this is the bigger piece of the opportunity, as you call the numbers. As this session is titled "Numbers Game." So really, the export opportunity and the role it plays in our economy from a trade point of view is tremendous. And I'm showing you one of the visuals where it shows the other big players. You see United States up here. This is just for food. So just within halal food, which is a $200 billion international trade as an overall value, out of that 13.8 billion, United States being number 3, and number 1 being Brazil, followed by India and then the United States when we just look at food. So US from a trade point of view is tremendous, has a tremendous play or place in this global halal trade space. Domestically, which I think a lot of the conversation so far has been, we have estimated that the Muslim lifestyle spending or the domestic spending on halal related products at 56 billion. And again, in our report, we detail out our methodology for coming up with that estimate, of which when we look at global spending on halal products, the spending on halal pharmaceuticals or media recreation is in fact the 3rd and the 2nd largest in the world. So even though the United States is not a major Muslim population market, nevertheless, given its because of the high income level relative to the rest of the Muslim majority countries, the United States itself is a tremendous halal domestic market, and hence is attracting investors, not just domestically, but internationally, to look at this opportunity. And then we have a domestic Islamic finance market as well, with an estimate of $3 billion, which is a smaller piece of the wider $2 trillion plus in Islamic finance assets worldwide. This is an older chart on the right-hand side from an older report we had done with the American Muslim Consumer Consortium, where we mapped, and as Marwan was saying, demographically, geographically, the concentration of Muslims in the certain in the various geographies. And I completely agree that I think one of the challenge of the U.S. as the market, both from the saturation or the complexity, is also its fragmentation and wide distribution. So when you have the markets in which you have Muslims in the West, such as United Kingdom or France, which are the other two big pockets of Muslim populations in the West. US is very challenging because the community is and the consumers are distributed across a wide geography. And in fact, sub-geographies become markets by themselves. So the domestic market opportunity is there, but it's challenging. One of the interesting data points, again, this is from our 2014 report, I wanted to mention is we also compared, we did a survey, and this is dated, so I do want to make that disclaimer from 2014. But it does highlight a unique characteristic of the domestic Muslim consumer market, which when we compared to, based on the survey, and compared it to the national average household expenditure, while most of the expenditure categories, household spending categories, map to the national average, education within our surveyed result really stood out as a key category where the Muslim consumers spend a lot more than the national average, which is a very interesting area of opportunity. And we see a lot of that being targeted. We've also done work on the global Islamic fintech space, and there's a lot of fintech that is emerging and coming out to serve both the domestic market. Wahed, LaunchGood, these are examples of the various fintechs that are both serving domestic, but as well as also have a regional and global reach. Here are some of the players we've highlighted from the United States that are part of, emerging as a global players or addressing the domestic market. Anyway, I just thought I'd share a few items. And when we calculate the investments that have happened around the world, even amidst the pandemic, over $11 billion of investments had been tracked by us that we would relate to fall under the halal economy worldwide, of which US has some role in it as well. So I think all of these dynamics are, they help, as we highlighted, decision makers make decisions, and we have been able to utilize or develop intelligence that has helped make investment decisions successfully. Alhamdulillah, have helped governments develop their strategies around their economic growth, and helping companies with their growth strategies themselves. So I hope some of these highlights go beyond talking about us discussing the importance, but I thought I'd share some of the insights that we have.
Excellent information. Is that report available publicly to businesses?
Yes, most of what I shared is publicly available, and and certainly has all the details in terms of the methodology and further details in it.
So I don't know if we have questions from our audience here, or folks on the hop-in. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. Do we have a question?
I was about asking about the
here.
report.
Sounds like somebody wants your report.
Yeah, and you asked the same question. You asked the same question that I was about to ask about the reports. He talked about out of reports, out of resources. So if they're like a file, you can share it with Mr. Marwan or like you guys can say, yeah, because I'm not sure. I'm not sure how many resources that he like get all these reports from. So if he has a file presentation for all these reports, it would be like we're grateful to share it with the guests here.
Great. I'll let Rafi answer, but I think it's available. Is it available on your website? And then you also mentioned that the report contains your methodology and presumably some of the sources.
So in order to download our State of the Global Islamic Economy report, a lot of what I shared is from that, is available from salamgateway.com. And for those who don't know about Salam Gateway, it's a news media that covers the global space, and you'll find a lot of regular news and so forth. But that's where you'd find the report I was referring to, and it's freely available. We do have some premium reports as well, but the ones that I've shared are all available publicly. The American Muslim Market Report, I'm not sure if it's listed there, but it probably is on our website, dinarstandard.com. If not, I welcome, through Marwan, happy to share those as well if you're not able to find them.
From the audience here. Yes, let me pass you the mic.
Assalamu alaikum. There was a report that was released in 2019, I believe, by Thomson Reuters, State of the Global Islamic Market, something to that effect. Is that in any way related to this report, or do you know of this report? I'm curious how that's, or if there's a relation there, if you could speak to it.
It's the same report. So we actually had been partnering since 2013 with Thomson Reuters, which, as some of you may know, is no more referred to or called Thomson Reuters. They're Refinitiv. And it was primarily produced by us in partnership with Thomson Reuters. And now, for the past 2 or 3 years, we've completely taken over. So it's the same report.
Do we have any questions in the chat, or no? We have a question in the audience. Here we go.
Assalamu alaikum. Pardon me for coming back and forth, but I heard you talk about make assessment of the market for education. Is there a dollar amount for the market for halal meat in the United States and versus Canada?
Sorry, I didn't understand the question fully. I heard something about education and meat together. So education and meat, those are the two things I heard.
Meat market in the United States and in Canada, is there a dollar amount or assessment of the value?
He's asking, is there a dollar amount associated with halal meat in the US versus Canada?
Absolutely, of course. I mean, we don't have it in that public report, but through the trade data, we are able to, and we have some reports. There's a recent one specifically on the global meat and livestock market, in which it's also the data is broken down by countries, the biggest exporters, and also consumers. So yes, but not in this annual report, which is more of an aggregate overview across all sectors, all geographies, gives a snapshot of the year's development and the data as compiled on investments, trade, and new developments in terms of new products, services being offered.
This report is a very good scope of knowledge about the global halal economy. And this is why we need a US study of halal market. something just specific for us that can highlight all the areas of interest that consumers are interested in and businesses are interested in.
Assalamu alaikum. My question is there any research on the amount of Islamic-owned farms in the United States or Canada? Because there's not a lot of transparency with Islamic-owned farms.
Not that I know of. Maybe Rafi has some other information.
Yeah, I mean, as analysts and research people, I think I would ask, what would you mean by Islamic owned? So, are these farms owned by Islamic? Are these owned by Muslims? Like, what do you mean? What would that question mean? And either way, there isn't. We don't have that exact data that you're referring to. Either way.
That if you want to look at several halal or Muslim business directories that list some of those, but you're not going to find a comprehensive Muslim-owned farms around the country, and this because that's a very specific niche that you're looking for. But there are several directories out there that might list some of them.
In terms of distribution, you have some type of source. There are several productions of meat, halal meat production companies. Crescent is one, and a lot of these international stores. Here in the DMV, there's several international stores. I'm not familiar with their company, but it says halal. But
well, let me make a distinction between. You give an example of a company name. I don't want to brand anybody.
Crescent is one.
I'm not going to say the name because we have sponsors here.
Okay.
Disclaimer. For respecting them. Most the halal meat you see in the market is not processed by Muslim companies. There are companies who buy the meat halal, package it, and sell it to you. Those doesn't mean they have their own farms and they have slaughterhouses. They buy it, halal certified by an American company. They package it and sell it to you. That's the vast majority of them, including the name you mentioned.
So I wanted to ask, because Rafi-uddin, you mentioned about the census here. There's been a very long-standing issue as to whether the census should distinguish Arab Americans versus other Americans or white Americans, which it doesn't. And some entities have been pushing for that. Would that help at all in providing better data on Muslims, do you think?
Not just if you're just saying a clarification or distinction of Arab Americans out of versus the demographic categorization of white, black, other Asian, the general segments we see. It may help a little bit more, but it doesn't get to the fact that not all Muslims are Arab Americans. We have
The Arab American market is not in any way a reflection of the halal market. Especially that most Arabs don't buy halal meat, halal food, unfortunately, because there is a fatwa that says you can say Bismillah and eat, which is fine if you believe in that. But if Arab Americans, Muslim Arab Americans, understand what goes on in the process, in the slaughterhouse, in the process of meat especially, or food in general, they will not buy except halal. They just are ignorant about it. I was one of them, by the way. There is ignorance of the difference between halal and not halal. Just because it's slaughtered by a Christian review does not make it halal by saying Bismillah. At one time, Christians and Jews used the same principles of slaughter, not in today's our world, unfortunately. And we know halal today through research and study that is a healthier option for us.
Right, the subject of the next panel discussion. Exactly. So Are there any more questions from the audience here? We're in the front row, Peter.
Thank you very much. Is there any data that would demonstrate what percentage of certain product areas have been third-party halal certified versus declaration of conformity, that companies just say, yeah, we've done it halal certified, but they declare it themselves and not confirmed by a third party?
Definitely, this is a discussion we had with the USDA, because they have, now we got into the labeling, which is fine. The USDA has two kind of halal labels through the policy: a certified halal and a generic halal. In their books, it's the same process, but what goes on the label is different from one to another. If you want it to be halal certified, you have to prove documentation and put it on the label. But if you just want to say halal, which you can, okay, you have to prove it to the USDA, but you don't have to prove it to the consumer.
Yeah.
And that creates a big gray area for the consumer. Anybody can print halal label and stick it to anything. You can stick it to a brick, you know, and it doesn't make it halal. But in their eyes, it's fine, you know. It's dangerous.
Other question?
I could, he kind of like covered my question.
So when you go to the store and you see the certification saying that this company is certified halal, there is a licensing body that allows those companies to retrieve that certification, or that's what I'm trying to understand.
Rafi, you want to answer that, or should I?
I didn't completely hear the question, but if I understand that within the so first of all, I think it's important to get this context that internationally and at the Director General of SMEEC on Ihsan Uvud, there is a global system to have the halal certifications harmonized and accredited and recognized from a quality control and credibility, and to avoid fraud and all of those things that we're concerned about. However, it is primarily enforced by governments that are Muslim majority countries who take upon themselves. And so within Muslim majority countries, those governments enforce and ensure that anything that is going to be called halal or imported halal is actually not just saying certified, but it goes through a verification process called, meaning the certifiers are accredited and they're supposed to follow a certain guidelines that conform to the requirements that that country has on halal. So when it comes to Muslim majority countries, at least on paper, things are taken care of, but there are, a whole lot of issues around that as well. Within the United States, because the government, as we're not as a secular government, the government doesn't take responsibility to ensure the validity of halal compliance. It's sort of left upon, the other entities to create certification that can be credible in the market and perhaps consumer driven. However, correct me if I'm wrong, Brother Marwan, but certain states, such as in New Jersey, now do have regulations that do at some level support that the certification for halal follows a compliance process and some validation at a state level at least. But at a national level, we don't have a system that can enforce the quality of certification and accreditation of the certifiers, which does exist in the Muslim majority countries, such as I'm sitting here in Dubai.
There are 9 states that have halal regulations today, and the state level is actually more regulated than on the federal level. On the federal level, there is no regulation, but there is policy. There is a USDA policy on halal, and the main purpose of the policy is to prevent fraud They don't care if it's religiously Islamic or not. They want to make sure if you say it's halal, it is halal. In that sense, you asked the question about store. I have never walked into a Muslim store and I saw halal certification on the wall. I have never seen it, which is a great idea to show that kind of transparency where they got their, at least the meat, where they got it from. It's been certified, and we know who certified it, and it's authentic certification, accredited as certification. That's what we need to know as consumers. That doesn't exist right now, which falls into the label of halal verification, meaning we trace that product, if it says halal on it, how it became halal, from where and how it got here, where it started and how it ended. That's called halal verification. And that's one of the programs we have in the American Halal Council, is to create this verification process so the consumer feels protected, because anything that can say halal doesn't mean it's halal, unfortunately. I don't want to scare you.
No.
But there is always a percentage of either error by mistake or percentage of fraud as well.
That was the first time I've seen it too. I'm from Tampa, Florida. Florida, the Muslim community there, you have people in the community that owns farmland, owns slaughterhouses, so you know exactly where everything's coming from. I'm new to this area. So like the first time I was seeing someone had a certification over the halal meat section. That was the first time I've seen that since I've been living here. I've been here for 2 years.
That's great. That's what we need to see more often. Unfortunately, there are international accredited certifiers and they're legitimate, and there are also legitimate local certifiers, even if they're not accredited. However, some companies call a local mosque and they talk to the imam and say, we need halal certification for somebody to make our product halal. Can you help us? He's like, sure, I'll come down and I will certify it for you. And then they go and they follow the process. They say Bismillah, Allahu Akbar, and they do. But they're not trained beyond this process, the religious part, because there is scientific part that follows after that, not just the Bismillah, Allahu Akbar process and hanging the meat. This is just the beginning. This is a small percentage of the process. It becomes very complicated, and Peter can tell you about how complicated the process can be in terms of processing the food, packaging it, transporting it, because it could be halal until it's transported in the wrong way and it becomes contaminated, then it becomes not halal. So it might have the good intentions, but then the results is not halal. I walked into a store a couple of months ago and I took a picture. I should have put it on the screen, where halal certified meat from New Zealand, somebody asked earlier about imported meat, was put in the same freezer, touching each other, pork product, not in a package, in a shrink wrap. Then it's not halal anymore. And correct me, Rafiq, if I'm wrong. It happens all the time, right, sir? It happens all the time. American halal meat, right there.
Right, lots to learn. And if we had something for halal, the way we have the foreign supplier verification program, which has those kinds of standards for all products, all processed food products that come into this country, then maybe we would be better off. But again, it's going to take a common voice. It's going to take. There's only 9 out of 50 states that have any regulation at all to do with halal and a policy at the federal level. Again, it's going to take the community coming together with one voice to say we need these kinds of regulations for consumer protection, to protect against fraud and for transparency. So we have another question? Yes, Raida.
As a Muslim, we are not interested only about halal, we're interested about organic. And it's very hard to find halal and organic products in the same item. How can you challenge that and come up with very good and quality items like meat, organic, and halal at the same time?
Oh boy. Now you made a difficult process more difficult, because Organic market is very organized and very controlled compared to us in the halal market. I wish we can be as good as them. Inshallah, one day, but that's the goal. One day, hopefully, if a company does that, I think it will be a winner that combines organic and halal. I think we have a question in the back.
We actually used to service our
Question, Elizabeth.
Right, talking to the mic?
Yes, because we have people listening from remote, from Malaysia, from all over the world.
Forgive me if I'm coming in a little late, but I was curious if we do find out that an organization is claiming they're doing halal meat and it's not halal, how do we report them? How would we report an organization that's claiming halal that's fraud? For example, like, there's a restaurant in DC, they market their meat as halal meat, but we recently found out that none of their meat is actually halal, they're just doing it for the image of it.
Okay, so you have to be careful with this. How to report it? It's easy. To prove it is hard. So if you go to AmericanHalalCouncil.org, there is a form you can fill out to file a complaint. Then we investigate. We will reach out to the company and ask them for a proof of the halal claim. Then proving it is the issue, because you have to have enough evidence to prove that they purchased non-halal and they claim it as halal. And we'd love to sue those companies. Trust me, we're looking for them. So if you can prove that a company is fraudulent, we will go after them.
I'm maybe reluctant to bring this up, but there are ISO standards for manufacturers, suppliers' declaration of conformity, and there are requirements that the supplier has to provide, has to be transparent, has to have the data behind their declaration of conformity. So if their product is not third-party certified, you need to ask them for the data that they're using to declare that they are halal. And if they're not able to provide it, then it's not acceptable. And that does tend to undermine third-party certification, but for low-risk products, it's a way to go. Unfortunately, in food, it's not the way to go. But if they're declaring halal without any third-party certification or any independent testing laboratory, then to me, you can't accept it.
Yeah, so the first step for you as a consumer is to take a picture or a video of the claim. So you have some tangible proof. Then take it from there.
So we're almost out of time here. I wanted to note that the question Raida asked about how do you find organic and halal? We have the next panel. Our moderator for that is Sarah Wali, who is here from American Halal Meat. She's going to be able to answer that question. So I think I'm going to thank our speakers now. Rafi-uddin, Shikoh in Dubai, but from Dnr Standard based in the US. Thank you very much for being with us. We appreciate all of your insight and your report, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of downloads of that report here. And also Marwan Ahmad, thank you very much for your broad insight. So please stick around for the last panel of the day. Very important. It's about the health and science of halal. And it's not just about the method of slaughter and saying Bismillah. There's a lot more that goes into the what makes it halal and why does it taste so good. So come back in 5 minutes.
Thank you.